This is me 5 years ago, and this is me today, after losing over 100 pounds. And now I want to figure out how to explain how I did it. The journey was messy and filled with false starts and missteps and failure, so whenever somebody asks me about it, it's always this long meandering story. But now I'm going to whittle it down to the essentials and take those 5 years of mess and turn it into a coherent story of how I came back from obesity. Welcome to Tread Talks, where I used to walk on a treadmill, but now I just try to do life better, one step at a time. In this video, I'm focusing on the mental side of my weight loss journey, because looking back, I can see that there are some key ideas that have become solid truths in my life, and accepting those ideas are what made it possible to change my health for the better. Next time, we'll talk about the practical side of what I did, but here I'm focused on the ideas and the mindset that made it all possible. The first idea I had to accept was this: I need to get 7 to 8 hours of sleep almost every night. And I know your mind is blown by this bombshell, but for me, accepting this involved a huge mental shift. I knew intellectually that sleep is important. I mean, that's one of the videos that I made years ago. But for some reason, I didn't want to accept it as being applicable to me. Instead, I would get to the end of each day and I would try to push it just a few more hours. And sometimes there would be a particular project I wanted to finish, and so I would drink some coffee to get 3 or 4 more hours to pour into it. I was basically trying to minimize the amount of time wasted on sleep so that I could do or accomplish as much as possible. I would see The Rock on Instagram, where he would post about starting his workout after 4 hours of sleep because he had to get the work in. And I found that motivational and aspirational and admirable. But I needed to be honest with myself. The day after one of those caffeine-fueled productivity nights, I would still need to wake up early, and the kids would still need to get to school, and I would need to get to work. And because I was running on so little sleep, I would have less discipline to make good eating choices. And so I would choose the fattier, cheesier foods throughout the day. And then I'd start rationalizing about how, well, I guess this is just going to have to be a cheat day. And it wasn't just with food. I would also be grumpier, and ironically enough, I would accomplish so much less the next day because I didn't have the energy to focus. I was just sabotaging myself each time I did that. And so the mindset shift for me was to eventually realize that this was hurting me and accept the fact that I'm a limited human being. Or maybe I should say I'm an average human being. I'm not one of those 3% of people that only need 3 or 4 hours of sleep a night. I am normal. My energy is finite. And my body is designed to operate with a consistent 7 to 8 hour sleep cycle. And if I was ever going to claw my way back from obesity, then I needed to accept my limitations so that I could organize my life in order to get that consistent sleep each night. Now, the next lie that needed to be undone was this false idea that maybe I could find a super fast way to lose the weight. Maybe I could just eat potatoes like Penn from Penn & Teller did when he lost 100 pounds in 3 months. And it's not surprising that I thought this way. I mean, the very first video on this channel was how I lost 60 pounds in 90 days. And basically I did it through hours of walking on a treadmill desk every day, and for 3 months I only consumed Soylent and vegetables. What I wanted was the fastest way to be done, with the hard part of losing weight, so that I could then get back to my normal life. And from a certain point of view, you could say that this method has worked for me. In fact, over my lifetime, this method has led me to lose hundreds of pounds. It's just that it's the same pounds over and over again, because I would inevitably rebound and regain the weight. After successful, intense periods of discipline with food, there would be seasons of indulgence. For all the time I spent significantly controlling my caloric intake, I would later spend time with midnight quesadillas and grilled cheese sandwiches. This was not an approach that had ever yielded durable, long-lasting results for me. And looking back, I can understand why that fast-track approach was never going to work long-term. From everything I've seen, coming back from obesity is one of the hardest things to do. Very few people do it, and even fewer people are able to keep the weight off. And those that are able to keep the weight off say that it's a lifelong process. It isn't just that one time that you lost 100 pounds and then went back to doing what you were doing before. And so the second idea I eventually accepted is that there is no fast path. It really is a lifelong effort. And the way I remember it is in the words of Toph from The Last Airbender when she's teaching Aang how to earthbend. She says, there's no different angle, no clever solution, no trickety trick that's going to move that rock. In order to lose the weight and keep it off, I would need to stop looking for clever solutions and instead accept that this would be a challenge for the rest of my life. And the more that I would think about that truth, the more hopeless it would feel. If there was no fast path, if that was the reality, if it had to be a forever change, then I honestly didn't know how that could be possible for me. And I plateaued for a really long time. That's why it took me 5 years to lose 100 pounds. But you know how sometimes you read a book, and that's not the end of the sentence. You know how sometimes you read a book and it plants an idea in your head and it just starts to take root and grow? Well, in 2020, a close friend of mine gifted me a book called Cant Hurt Me by David Goggins. And like a lot of other people in their mid-40s who are maybe going through a little bit of a midlife crisis, I found his story really inspirational. He had a difficult childhood with an abusive father, had difficulty in school, and eventually he found himself weighing 300 pounds, doing pest control for not that much money, drinking chocolate milkshakes and eating donut holes while watching TV after work each day. And from that low point in his life, through a series of attempts and failures and decisions that are well told in the book, he transformed his body, became a Navy SEAL, became an endurance athlete, held the world record for the number of pull-ups done in 24 hours, wrote 2 books, and now he's a smoke jumper fighting wildfires in British Columbia. But beyond just being generally motivated by the story, one idea I latched onto in the book was this: I can do much more than I think I can. The way he talks about it in the book is this Navy SEAL idea that when your mind tells you to give up, you've probably only used up about 40% of what your body can do. And look, I don't know if that number is accurate or if that statement is scientifically true, but it seemed to be true for David Goggins, and I found that so many other endurance athletes would say similar things, that often your mind will tell you to stop at the first sign of discomfort when really your body can do so much more. And so it gave me this weird sense of hope. Maybe that 40% thing was true for me too. Maybe I had way more potential than I thought. Yes, statistically speaking, most people aren't able to come back from obesity and keep the weight off. It's really difficult. But thousands of people do, and I would probably have a better shot of achieving that for myself if I chose to believe that I could do more than I thought I could. And then I proceeded to take it too far too fast. I started running again, but I dove into it and ran farther and more frequently than my feet could handle, and pretty soon I started feeling some pain in the bottom of my foot, but I ignored it and I ran even more, and eventually a noticeable bump started to form, and long story short, I had to have a cortisone shot injected into my plantar fascia, and it hurt and it sucked. And that's where the next idea came in. I really just needed to tweak the previous one a little bit. I can do much more than I think I can, but not all at once, you fool. Just like with sleep, if I pushed too far too fast, I would end up sabotaging my own success. I'm an average human being in an average human body, and that means that, like almost everyone else, real change mostly happens incrementally. You enter into some sort of discomfort, you push a little bit beyond what you think you're physically capable of, and when your body repairs itself and recovers, it's then capable of doing a little bit more. And then you do it again, and you push a little bit farther. And over weeks and months and years, you achieve tremendous change, change that you couldn't have imagined. And the picture I got in my head was the image of a river. The Colorado River helped form the largest canyon in the United States. In fact, most canyons are formed by water, slowly and incrementally carving through thousands of feet of rock over millions of years. Rivers are persistent, and the massive change that they make is incremental, just like my change needed to be. And so 2.5 years ago, after that horrible cortisone shot in the bottom of my foot, I started a run streak, where every day, no matter what, I would run at least 1 mile outside. The idea was to be consistent and to form a habit that I could maintain in the long run. On my first run, after the bump in my foot went away, I went 3 miles and my feet hurt a little bit. This past weekend, I was able to do a 20-mile run, and it's all because of incremental, consistent work. And then the last idea that became foundational to my life came while doing that run streak. I was listening to the book Born to Run by Christopher McDougall, which is an excellent book that explores the Tarahumara people in Mexico who are renowned for their long-distance running. Along the way, the book makes the case that humans are designed to be long-distance runners. And I was enjoying the book and feeling motivated, and then came this one passage that has stuck with me forever. The author is talking to Dr. Dennis Bramble of the University of Utah, who says this: "We monitored the results of the 2004 New York City Marathon and compared finishing times by age. What we found is that starting at age 19, runners get faster every year until they hit their peak at 27. After 27, they start to decline. So here's the question. How old are you when you're back to running the same speed you did at 19? The answer? 64. which means that a runner nearing their retirement age will run better on average than a runner in their early 20s. There's something really weird about us humans. We're not only really good at endurance running, we're really good at it for a remarkably long time. We're a machine built to run, and the machine never wears out. Now that was a bit of hyperbole at the end there, I think, but that hit me like a ton of bricks, in a good way. Because one of the things I was struggling with as I got closer to 40 and weighed about 300 pounds was this idea that my best years were behind me. Even if I lost the weight, I was still way past my prime. But this was telling me no. There's an arena in which you still have amazing potential, Chris. Humans are built for running, and your potential for growth is still insanely high. The truth is, you haven't peaked yet. It's not too late. And suddenly I got this picture of my own physical performance graph and wanting to see just how much higher I could make it go before I started to decline. And once I declined, how slow could I make that decline be? I could pour myself into this incrementally for most of the rest of my life. It was like I had stumbled into treasure that had been sitting right in front of me. All of these ideas together formed the mindset that made it possible for me to finally get to where I am now, accepting and embracing that I need sleep, that there is no fast path, that I can do far more than I think I can, just not all at once, and that it's not too late. Without these ideas in my head, I wouldn't be making this video right now. Now, these specific ideas aren't a prescription, and they're not advice. I am not a doctor. I'm just some guy. But this is my story, and my hope is that sharing it provides some motivation to not give up and to keep trying. In the meantime, if you want to be entertained, while I was losing those 100 pounds, I made the most epic, entertaining training montage to go with it. It took me 5 years to make, and you can watch it right here. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, and have a great day. Whew, all right, done. Here we go.